Welcome, friends, it's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about the movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
Welcome to Movie Film. It's episode 299, brought to you by Mr. Boy Productions. I'm Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
Hey, we're back after our, what feels like a summer break, kind of.
I know. I mean, we still had stuff dropping, but a couple of those things we had banked. And so I was telling Federica last night, like, it feels weird. Like, we've had, you and I think almost like 2 weeks, since we last recorded.
2 weeks of not talking to each other at all.
I know. And we've both been traveling. We've both seen this great country of ours.
It's true.
Which has been nice. How was it? How was your trip?
It was good. Yeah, I went to Chicago as I tend to do during the summer. I've come to anticipate that as sort of my end of summer getaway. So this year it was kind of a question mark whether I'd be able to make it because there was baby coming, but I was able to move some things around, and it was me and my second kid. We had a lot of fun. It was just the two of us, which was nice. You know,
that's cool. Like bonding trip.
Hopefully. And speaking of Bond, yeah, we went to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, and they have a Science of 007 exhibit there.
What does that get into? Like the gadgets and
so they got the props, and you know that you've got the actual golden gun wielded by Christopher Lee on display. You have the jetpack worn by Sean Connery. Plus, so many cars. You have the from Living Daylights and the Spy Who Loved Me and Die Another Day, Casino Royale, et cetera, et cetera. You see all the cars there. For me, it was a lot of fun. And the nice thing is my son and I had gone through the majority of the Bond movies just last year, so they were within his frame of reference, which was extra nice.
Man, that's perfect. Wow, that's fun.
Yeah, there was this other thing that was super cool. On Navy Pier, it's this exhibit called Flyover.
Okay.
And it's kind of this, it's similar to, I think at Disney, they have something called Soaring.
Yes, Soaring over California.
Exactly. So this is basically that, but Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're in a chair, you buckle up, and it's like a dome projection of like drone footage flying in and around Chicago.
Dude, was there a video beforehand starring Patrick Warburton?
No, not Patrick Warburton. It was a video kind of saying how awesome Chicago is, which you don't need to tell me that. You already got my ticket.
Hey, it's my kind of town.
It indeed it is. Per Sinatra, yeah. And I'll tell you, I have not done Soaring, but it's what it must be like to be Superman.
Right. Yep.
You know.
Yep, I love it. I've only done the Disneyland one, but it's one of those things that everybody loves. You know, even though it's just getting in a chair and sitting in front of a big movie screen at like the most fantastical theme park in the world, it's just that cool. Yeah. You know, it's that transportive, and also I know on the California one, they spray scents into the room occasionally, right. So you'll go over an orange grove and you'll smell oranges. Do they do that?
Similar, yeah, and you feel kind of wind in your face.
Yeah.
I mean, there at one point it goes above the skyline, so you're talking like above the Sears Tower, and you're looking straight down, and then it drops, and just I'm not moving, right, but unconscious, I'm like, whoa, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
So that was I'm really glad I did that. And that was totally my son. Like we were running late, and I was like, all right, I don't think we're going to do it. He's like, let's just do it. I'm glad we did that.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad he said something too.
Yeah. I mean, it helps, honestly, because otherwise, if I have the whole clown car with me, it's harder to fork out for some of the stuff. You know, we did like this speedboat thing off of Lake Michigan, which was just bananas because we were just completely drenched by the end of it.
You sent me a picture of before and after.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was like completely soaked. A
That
lot
was
of
hilarious.
fun, but
Yeah.
but it's if I had everybody, I'd be like, nope, not doing that because it
Right.
was it was not cheap. But a great time. Also, I want to mention one of our regular listeners, Adam Lance Hendrickson. Usually when I go to Chicago, I try to meet him. We've grabbed breakfast last couple times. This time we weren't able to make breakfast work, but I was like, hey. Why don't we watch Alien Romulus?
Oh, cool.
And Adam, God bless Adam, it was his 10th anniversary.
Oh,
And he's like, I'm going to hang out with my wife in the evening, but in the afternoon, I'm going to hang out with you.
wow. Dude, that's great.
So I was really glad about that. So thank you, Adam, for making the time for that. I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention that just because this is a thing that just happened to me. I just dropped my car off for service this morning,
Mhm.
and the service advisor at Nissan is somebody I had as a student like 17 years ago.
Wow. That's amazing.
Right. So he's like, Mr. Hassan? Yeah. I was like, and it took me a second, but I recognized him, and he's got like gray temples now and stuff. And I'm like, wow,
Wow.
damn, and he said the nicest thing. He's like, I've been on this whole journey in my life since then, and yours is one of the classes that stayed with me. And he said, I don't necessarily remember everything you taught me, but I remember how you taught it to me.
Huh.
Like the enthusiasm that I had being there and whatever. And I mean, what else can I ask for, right?
That sounds like the highest compliment.
That was it got my day off to a good start, I have to say.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. That's so cool.
But what have you been up to? Enough about me. Who cares about me?
Well, I spoken about on our Twisters commentary, our mutual friend Sean used to be a co-host on the show. He and his family moved out of California into North Carolina, and so the family, majority of the family flew out there, but there were two dogs.
Right.
To also get across.
This is Sean's family, by the way.
Sean's family, I should say, yeah. And so Sean and I, he rented a minivan, and we loaded it up with things and the two dogs, and we literally drove from L.A. to North Carolina.
So did you have like the Bill Conti Karate Kid opening music playing?
We should have.
You should have, right?
Yeah. Instead of, I remember when his mom, when they arrive in California, she's like, look at those palm trees. Like I should have been like, look at those lighthouses, when we got out there. But it was incredible. I mean, obviously it was very bittersweet, just having Sean move out there, but it's a trip I'll never forget. It was just one of those things where you get to be in a car with your best friend for like the entire day, literally seeing the country, being, where are we? Oh, we're in Texas. Oh, okay. Like just
right.
One of those things, and just getting to eat random places, letting the dogs out. We were saying, these dogs got to see more of the country than some other people ever get to see in their lives, pee on different grasses. So it was a really awesome, meaningful time that meant a lot to me. And,
man, I feel like I missed out.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, if it's going to happen and you're going to have a friend move so far away, it's just really special to get to spend that time then on that, have that journey, be a part of that moment.
Yeah. So for folks listening, maybe more recent comers who may not realize, Sean co-hosted this show with us for the first, about a year and a half or so of this podcast. And of course he's dipped back in ever since. But above and beyond that, I mean, he and I know I can speak for you with this too. I mean, he has been a constant presence in our lives for the better part of a quarter century.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And I've known him since high school. You've known him since college, and there was that. I've always had that sense that even as when we lived in Chicago, he was no more than 15 minutes away, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When I would go over to his parents' house so much that they would set a place for me at the dinner table. I was like the Skippy if they were the Keatons,
We're gonna have to go down a wormhole or a rabbit hole of a reference explanation.
Yeah, look it up, kids. And then when I moved to California, he followed shortly within a few months. Yeah, I was in the Bay Area. He moved to LA. But even though California is a pretty big state and that's pretty far, it was like a 45-minute plane ride away.
Right.
And so there was that sense of like, well, Sean is right there, and he's still right there. He's just a text message away. But there's something about knowing he's across the country now.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely, it hit me hard, but it's also, I mean, this is life, right? Life is change.
Like there's many chapters in our books, and it's always kind of weird when a new chapter starts.
Yeah.
But then you look back at some of the older chapters, and they felt weird and different when they started. But then you're like, oh, that still was a beautiful chapter. And I think it was nice for me being out there because it didn't feel far away. It was like, oh, well, I get to see where he is now. This is the town. This is, whatever. I got to exist in that for a day, go to the beach with the whole family and everything. And it felt very accessible. And then I got on a plane and I flew back and I was like, well, that was easy. So it's like, I'll get on a plane again and fly back out there.
So you did not have to ride a covered wagon or Oregon Trail style.
There were many times when I was looking at this great nation of ours, its landscape, and I was like, why did they keep going? These crazy mountains, and I was like, wow, I can't even fathom it.
Yeah.
What that would have been like, the Oregon Trail.
But hey, we're grateful they did the work on our behalf, right?
That, and also, I have to say, literally taking a freeway from like one ocean to the other, I marveled at like the people that built these things, that plotted out all our freeways and roads and everything across, and like connected this huge country of ours. Like it's remarkable. I mean, it's just to think that road never stopped and it went all the way from one coast to the other. It really, we talked about it. We're like, that's incredible. These people that built this thing.
I hope you kind of filmed a little bit of the business you encountered along the way, just to track that journey. I feel like that would make a fun, montage of some kind to cut together.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of film, a lot of pictures for sure. Yeah. But yeah, cool. Yeah. So then we both rolled back into town.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was very selfishly, I was like, hurry up and get back so I can talk about Alien Romulus with you.
You know what? Well, I want to, now I'm like, we'll get right into that, but we will. We'll
get there. Well, what else have you seen?
I saw right before I left, I saw two things that I'll mention. One is, I'd mentioned it before, but the show on Hulu, The Bear, which is, takes place in Chicago, speaking of, and about a professional chef who inherits kind of a family business where they make Italian beef sandwiches, and then he turns it into like a real high-end kind of restaurant. And the journey, he keeps the crew, the staff on from the beef restaurant, and it's sort of the journey of going from one type of restaurant to the other. And it's a very, it's sort of, I've said it before, but I'm sure a lot of people said this. It's like uncut gems in a restaurant. It's very intense, very stressful. But the characters are really good. And I worked in restaurants for a while, and so I really like seeing that environment. And I had heard, I'd loved season 1, loved season 2.
And by the way, when you and I first met, you were working in a restaurant.
That's right.
I was while server. You were working in said restaurant.
Yep. And you were at my table, and we found out that we were going to be in the same film class in a week.
Cut to 25 years later, exactly 25 years later. Who'd have thunk?
Here we are. It's amazing.
Here we are, 299 episodes into a podcast.
Man, I mean, and just to now like spin off a little bit, like I took Federica to my hometown for the first time this year, and that restaurant, Houlihan's, I mean, it was a real formative experience for me working there. It was like a second college experience, honestly, and I'm still close with a lot of those people that I worked with, and it's since gone out of business, and but the building is still there.
It's like, isn't it something else now?
It's just a husk. I mean, it's empty. And so Federica and I went up, and the whole thing was my brother and I worked there for X amount of years. And there was a booth that had these 2 name plaques on it of these 2 women,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody knew who they were. And we're like, oh, well, my brother and I like, well, we're leaving. We've been here for a while. And I guess it's like the hubris of being 20 years old or 21 years old. We're like, let's take those down and put up our names as plaques. And so that's what we did. Like our last night, we took drills out, undrilled those plaques, put our names into the booth. And I had people who, from that town who I went to high school with and beyond, and they would text me through the years and be like, dude, your plaques are still there. Like they're still in the booth. And so sure enough, this year when Federica and I went out there, we looked through the window, all the tables are gone. The place is almost completely empty, but those 2 plaques are still on the wall.
Well, damn. All right.
Yeah, we're going to be there till the roof caves in, I guess.
that's kind of it. That's like it's those documentaries on the Learning Channel or something, like The World Without Us or The World After Us.
Yes, right.
Like nothing left but that.
Yep. Yeah. Or like when Bart writes his name in the concrete and they're like, who was this Bart? Like but yes, going back to the Bear, season 1, great. Season 2, I really loved. There was an episode that focused on one character that I think might be one of my favorite episodes of TV ever. And season 3, I kind of put off. I don't know why. I just wanted to be in the right mood for it. And I had heard a lot of people saying, oh, this is where it's starting to go off the rails. Like they had listened to their own hype and now it's becoming a little pretentious, and they're, certain episodes will revolve around one idea and then just spin its wheels in that idea for 30 minutes and go art, kind of a thing. And so I went into that like, oh, here we go. I'm not ready to not like this thing. But I liked it. So I can see what some people are saying. Just recently, I can't recall who, but I saw someone posting about the first episode, which is essentially a montage. The whole 30 plus minutes is a montage. And it's almost like a previously on in a way, but there's a lot of new footage and you're understanding the main character a little bit more, seeing a little bit more of his past. It's very artistic. It's very out there. But it totally worked for me. And that said, there were other episodes, if you want to call them bottle episodes, I suppose, that didn't work for me as well. And there was one, I'll just say it's one where someone is giving birth and it's literally just 2 characters talking for the whole episode. And I quickly realized that's all that was going to happen. It's like, oh, she's going to have a monologue and then she's going to have a monologue and then the other person's going to have a monologue again. I was like, oh, okay. Like, and I don't know, maybe it was the wrong night, but I was not feeling it. And I was like, okay, this is one of those that I'm just going to have to let go. And I watched it, but then they had another episode where they focused on one particular character and their journey, and magic. Just like a short film, a beautiful short film about just a person. So, looking at the arc of the season, did we get very far? Not really, actually. Not really. I mean, they sort of set up a goal at the beginning that I watched it a week ago, but I don't think we got there. But I enjoy spending time in this place, and I find the characters very compelling. And I believe I read somewhere, don't quote me on this, but I believe that the creator wanted 3 seasons, but Hulu wanted 4.
Okay.
And they shot these back to back, 3 and 4.
Okay.
So I wonder if there's a little bit of a stretching that was happening.
Oh, interesting.
And I know that happened with Ted Lasso also, where they were like, okay, we'll do, 10 episodes. And then Apple's like, can you give us 13? And then there was like these 3 episodes that just did not flow with the other. So I don't know if that's the case, but my opinion, I still enjoy this world and I'm looking forward to season 4. So
yeah.
Have you checked it out?
I haven't. I have been meaning to. My wife loves it. She ended up rewatching the first 2 seasons and then going right into the third one.
Wow.
So she really likes it. But the what occurs to me as we're talking about this, and maybe this doesn't apply specifically to the Bear, but just in general, I'm kind of like, can we bring back 20 episode seasons?
I would like there for it not to be an aversion to it. If a
Right.
show has 20 episodes, let it have 20 episodes. If a show
Right.
has 6 episodes, let it have 6 episodes. I'd kind of like, and it seems that is the case, I guess, but I'd like for there to be no rules. Like, let the story be what it wants to be,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about how there were certain episodes in the season that struck you as, oh, they're trying to do some kind of a, not gimmick, that's the wrong word, but something different, something off the
Mhm.
beaten path, right? I'm
Mhm.
like, it would stick out less if there were more regular episodes.
I could see that. Yeah,
You
sure.
know? Like
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. It's an imperfect analogy, but like with on Paramount Plus they have the Star Trek, the Strange New Worlds show, right?
Mhm.
Which is something in the mold of the original series and Next Generation, where it's kind of like your Planet of the Week show, right?
Right.
Except each season is 10 episodes, as opposed to those shows at their peak where you were looking at between 24 and 26.
Mhm.
And so what happens is, like, the most recent season, you had one episode where it was a musical episode.
Uh-huh.
So some weird space anomaly causes the crew members to start singing.
Right.
Hey, that's fine. It's quirky. It's fun. And then they had one where it was like a crossover with the cartoon, the Lower Decks cartoon show.
Right.
Totally fine. Quirky. It's fun. It's different. Right? But now it's like 2 quirky episodes out of 10.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm like, well, I like having those, but I also don't like losing like the serious ones.
Maybe there's something that's a little more serialized.
Yeah.
Like Lost, a show like Lost, where maybe that would have benefited from having more like 16 episode seasons or something.
Sure. Yeah.
But when it's something that's more story of the week,
yeah.
or sitcom-y, or like The Simpsons or something like that, then yeah, it'd be fun to have more.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that's a good point though, that the ones that disappoint you would stand out less.
Exactly, right? Because it's like, oh, we got a whole bunch of these,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm on this show. I've been stumping for the traditional network model of television, which, for as flawed as it was, it worked for a very long time before streaming showed up, and to a lesser extent cable, and was like, no, we're going to do it this way instead.
Right.
And everyone followed suit,
Yeah, well, who knows? Maybe we'll be getting back to that at some point.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Well, speaking of streaming, I watched one other thing that I thought I'd bring up, which is a Disney movie. It was on Disney Plus. It's called Young Woman and the Sea,
Mm-hmm.
and it's starring Daisy Ridley.
Oh, so this is the new Star Wars movie that she's...
Yeah. Yes.
It's called Star Wars Young Woman and the Sea.
Yeah, I'm surprised more people aren't talking about it. The new Star Wars. Basically, well, the plot is from IMDb. It says the story of competitive swimmer Gertrude Ederle, who in 1926 was the first woman to ever swim across the English Channel. And I saw this trailer in the theater, and I was like, huh, that looks kind of old school.
Right.
Looks like sort of like a Wonderful World of Disney kind of movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think a lot about it. I was like, oh, it looks nice, And then I saw it was getting these really amazing reviews. And so much so that I almost went to go see it in the theater. I just wanted to see something good. It's something good that felt, I didn't know the story, felt a little old fashioned in a way that appealed to me. And then I missed it. So it shows up on Disney Plus, and I got to say, it's exactly what I thought it was going to be. And I mean that in the best way. Like, it was very reminiscent of like older Disney sports films, sort of like Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken, like those kind of old school things.
Okay.
And somewhat like Remember the Titans, things like that. I say Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken because its execution felt a little simple at times.
Mm-hmm.
Taking place in the 20s, there's a lot of emphasis on girls can't swim in a pool. They never have, and they never will. And you need that, obviously, to understand the world, but it gets to the point where it almost gets repeated so many times it starts to feel like Walk Hard or something, you know what I mean? Like parodying those types of movies about girls have never crossed the sidewalk, they never have, and they never will, and so for that reason, again, you need it. You need that to understand what she's working against because it's so different. Well, a lot different than the world we live in. But it can occasionally make the film feel like it's for a younger audience.
Mm-hmm.
So throwing that out there, like it does feel. But I mean, I think that's kind of nice. I mean, like how many family movies have come out recently
Right.
that aren't like something sort of chaotic and goofy, like the Despicable Me movies or something. Like this is just
Mm-hmm.
like a cool tale, a true story, and by the end of it, I was like pumping my fist. Like I was really rooting for her. She has a
Wow.
lot that she's working against. She had people who are working against her, and then of course, it's hard enough trying to swim the English Channel. I mean, I'm a competent swimmer. I'm not a great swimmer, and watching her swim against waves in the ocean for like 20 plus hours, you're like,
Uh-huh.
this is insane. And so, yeah, they do a really good job of turning it into something where you understand the goal, you understand what's against her at the finish line, and making it really compelling for her to get there. And I mean, yeah, I was like cheering when it was over. It's just like a solid, feel good family film, and I thought it was worth recommending.
And it's on Disney Plus.
It's on Disney Plus. If people are looking for that, I think they'll enjoy it.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, and Daisy Ridley, she's great. Like she has this like sparkle or something, and I'm surprised we don't see her in more things. Like she's very, I don't know. She just exudes something. She's very captivating, and I enjoyed her a lot in this, and it made me think like, wow, I'm just surprised we don't see more of her.
Well, hopefully, well, first of all, it's smart of Disney to kind of keep her in the fold,
Oh yeah, definitely.
right? And I suspect that if this Ray movie that they're working on performs, that'll kind of broaden her options, one presumes.
Yeah, well, speaking of, I mean, I'm rooting for that. I really want that movie to be awesome, but I think you saw that the Acolyte got canceled, right?
Yeah, I did see that. Not
Yeah.
not terribly surprised, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, did you finished it?
I did finish it.
It ended on a cliffhanger, right?
Well, it ended yes and no. I mean, it ended yes. It end. Let me put it this way: it ended at a place where they could very well have been like, and here's what happens next. But I think they also ended at a place where, like, that's where this story ends, and something else could pick up certain threads later.
Well, that's good. I was feeling kind of bummed. I was seeing obviously mixed reactions online because
Yeah.
it's been mixed reaction kind of show. But I was feeling bad for the people that were invested if there was some story hanging there.
I mean, ultimately, I am baffled by the idea that you would spend $180 million on a season of television.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
It's insanity, right? So at that point, you say, well, you can't make something. I was going to say that's this polarizing, and that's almost unfair to this show because it's really, I don't think it is particularly polarizing, except that everything now involving
Sure.
Star Wars has become polarizing, right?
Right.
But I would say, just as a matter of course, I just watching the show, I think it's well made, but I don't really see that money on screen, so I don't know. I don't know that you needed to do that, and I think you're better off showing you can do it for less out of pocket,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's weird. I greeted the news with kind of like, all right, well, that's fine. Like it doesn't particularly affect me
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't blown away by the show. I thought it was fine,
Mm-hmm.
But it has been aggravating seeing sort of the victory dance from people.
Yeah, sure.
Right. It's like, again, it's just, and this is a broken record at this point. Like, why does everything have to be a thing?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, coming at it from where I work and stuff, I look at it as jobs, and dreams, and that was someone's dream. And like, it's, even if I don't like something, I'm still sad to see it come to an end because it doesn't have to be for me, but that's someone's dream. Those are people's jobs, and that sucks. At the same time, it exists, and it's another thing on the shelf, the Star Wars shelf, and it's always going to be there for people to pick up when they want to.
I definitely agree with that. And the conversation, what really aggravates me the most is sort of this shorthand of, oh, well, they went woke and that's why they went broke, and And this show in particular, I'm just like, well, what's the quote unquote woke here? The fact that it has people of color in most of the primary roles,
Mm-hmm.
like so like because I'm like, well, so what?
Right, right.
I'm like, cool, right? Like, so there's this narrow casting of like uh, the mere presence of diversity is a call to arms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I feel like if a story is being contorted, like someone's trying to work with like one arm tied behind their back for some sort of agenda, and I don't even mean like a political or like a cultural or any agenda, but just a studio agenda, this agenda, like
right?
that's unfortunate when you can feel that. But it's like
Yeah,
when you're complaining just because human beings are cast
yeah.
in a show, like that's not. I don't know. What are we doing here?
Well, I saw some like in the show. One of the Jedi that we see is a little bit heavier set.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like, oh, this is just like, why are they having, Jedi are allowed to be fat now? And this is, like,
Yeah.
oh, because we have to accept all kinds of people or whatever. And I just like, this is truly the dumbest timeline we've wandered into.
I know.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, because I'm just looking at it like, well, if you're adept at the Force, I don't think your body type matters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're just good at the Force, right? And it's not like, I mean, it's just different. I don't know, Brian.
No, well, I'm on the same page as you.
I'm like, why are we doing this? And we talked about this a little while ago. Like, Ki-Adi-Mundi, the show says he was born here, and previous canon said he was born here, and suddenly it's like the Jedi arena in episode 2. It's all these Ki-Adi-Mundi fans coming out of the woodwork. We're like, and I'm like, you people did not exist like a month ago.
Yeah. Man, I mean, it's got to be difficult when they're trying to figure out their steps forward. Like it's been challenging figuring out what to do post the films, but also you just know people already have their knives out no matter what you're doing.
Well, to that point, because you and I discussed the trailer for the Mandalorian film.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if that was on air or not.
We texted about it.
Okay, yeah.
But I mean, they haven't released an official thing, but there's pictures and stuff that have sort of broken, right?
Uh-huh.
And just in terms of, I mean, not having seen the trailer, but just as a concept, right? We're like, well, what is this movie going to play?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think that's the big question, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you were to put out a new, I know people hate this, but just for whatever, like a new Skywalker film, let's say, like, or Star Wars 8 or whatever you want to call it, you can have a certain expectation of what, how many people are going to show up for that.
Yeah.
This feels to me for the first time kind of uncharted territory. Well, maybe Rogue One, but right, this feels a little different, and will be an interesting experiment to see what the audience is like for this.
Yeah, I think that what it has working in its favor is the fact that it has been so long now since the last movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, because it's due out. When is it due out? Actually,
next summer, I think. Right.
Next summer. Okay, so yeah, we'd be looking at 6 years since the last movie.
Wow. Yeah.
So maybe that'll help. Maybe that'll help. Find an audience. In the meantime, real quick, just wanted to mention I have begun my umpteenth rewatch of The West Wing.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I was moved to do this because of this new book that I've been listening to it, but it via audiobook, but it's a book also. And it's called What's Next? And it's by Melissa Fitzgerald and Mary McCormick, who were both actors on The West Wing. And this is basically the definitive oral history of the series.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And for any fan of the show, which I suspect some of the people listening are fans, it's it is just a love letter to the show, and it really, you know, some of the stories are known, some are less known, but just to really to get into the perspectives of the people involved. Again, you already know this, but The West Wing is my favorite TV show of all time, and so it ends up being like every presidential election year I end up rewatching it.
Yep.
And I love it every single time. And I love it for so many different reasons, but foremost among them being the way it presents public service as an inherent good. This is something worth doing, right? So we have so many cynical shows about politics, about our politics, whether the doofus angle like Veep, or the sinister angle like House of Cards or whatever. And here's a show that says, no, this is something that's possible. You can have decent people going into politics to genuinely help people. And maybe that is sci-fi.
Sure. Or aspirational.
Aspirational, absolutely, you know?
Yeah.
But that's why I keep going back to that show.
Yeah, man, I've got to get to it. That, and Sean was telling me about Friday Night Lights again. He's like, "You really
sure, yep, absolutely,"
so
and kind of similar vein, you know.
Sure.
Pointing to our best selves, you know. Like I know for sure. Well, Friday Night Lights, I know for sure you're gonna adore that show.
Sure.
But I believe you. Hey, Federica likes West Wing.
So yeah, I know she loves it.
Between the two of us, I figure we can nudge you, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But the audiobook is terrific, and I suspect that the book is just as good. And I just wanted to throw out a recommendation for that.
Nice.
That other book I was telling you about last time, The Future Was Now.
Yes. That
ended up being like my Chicago trip listening for the whole, and it was me and my son. We ended up listening to the whole book. Man, dude, you will for sure love it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out.
I mean, it's crazy to think about how summer of '82, just these incredibly influential films were all crammed into this 8-week period, just one on top of the other.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, obviously, E.T. was at the top of the heap, but like Blade Runner and The Thing and Conan the Barbarian, Star Trek 2 and Tron, you know, and every this is the point that the book makes. Every single one of those films, except one, has been sequelized or remade or continued in some form in the 42 years since.
Right.
And obviously, the only one that has not is. Well, you tell me, Brian.
E.T. Although Spielberg is making another UFO movie, so fingers crossed.
Hey, fingers crossed. But absolutely worth a read or worth a listen. However you consume your books, I know you'll just devour it.
Okay, I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah. But hey, let's take a short break, and we'll come back with some listener letters. And we're back, and hey, we got some notes in the old mailbag, Brian.
Oh, great. I love it.
Here's one we got from Adam O, who says, "Hi guys, it was so much fun to listen to the commentary on Twister and then your review of Twisters, and hearing Sean gush about how much he loves the original movie. My son, also a Sean, and I took a long weekend road trip last summer to Wakita, to the Twister Movie Museum, and even made a side quest a bit further east to Kaw Lake, where the cows scene was filmed. We're planning a trip back in 26 for the 30th anniversary. They're already making plans for a big event. In the museum, they have a graphic of the BP that Storm Chasers did across the region in memorial to Bill Paxton. It was awesome to hear Sean mention it. I admit I got a lump in my throat. With Twisters, I had such a great time and was glad you guys did too, even though I hate Glenn Powell.
Interesting.
Jeez, dude. Save some good looks for the rest of us. I kind of agree with that, actually. As for the other little art film that you covered recently, I can't believe you forgot to mention the real star of Deadpool and Wolverine. Peggy, aka Dogpool, stole the show, and man, Ryan Reynolds let her go all in with that tongue action.
Yeah.
Hearing Zachy break down all the Wolverine variants that I knew when I saw the movie was so much fun. Only a true 80s, 90s era comic geek would really appreciate all of those. That's right. So you can see yourself out, Brian. Having Wesley Snipes come back as, spoiler alert, Blade. He's now the longest tenured Marvel character in movies. I was actually thinking about that. As soon as he showed up, I was like, boom, got himself a Guinness record.
Wow. Yeah.
He says, I saw the first Blade the day before I went to basic training, which means I'm, well, we don't need to talk about that. Best wishes as always, Adam. Yeah, I watched the first Blade opening night in the theater.
So wait, I always picture those as 2000s movies. What, that was the
98,
90s, right?
First one was 98.
Okay.
98. Okay. And I can attest to the fact that nobody was taking that movie seriously from the trailers.
I kind of remember that. Like it wasn't something I felt like I had to go see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and in fact, even the Marvel people were trying to distance themselves from it.
Were you familiar with the comic, or the character, I guess?
I was familiar with the character. Yeah, I mean, in an abstract sense. I mean, the movie largely reinvented him because he was such a blank slate.
Mm.
Like he was introduced. There was a comic book in the 70s called Tomb of Dracula, and it's about Dracula in the Marvel universe, and it's a terrific comic series. It's about this group of vampire hunters in the modern day who are trying to defeat Dracula, and it's kind of, it's like a drama series set within the Marvel universe. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you go into the Nostalgia Theater podcast archives, I interviewed Glenn Greenberg about Dracula in general, but we specifically got into that comic book because he was such a big fan of that book that he, in the late 90s, he got to write a Dracula miniseries for Marvel that was kind of a sequel to that book.
Wow, that's cool.
But regardless, Blade was introduced in that book as part of that ensemble.
Okay.
And we're talking mid 70s, so it's like Shaft as a vampire hunter.
Right. Sure.
You know what I mean? He's a big afro. He had the leather jacket and stakes, and so they had a very bare framework there that they then took an entirely different direction in the film. And that's what became the definitive version. So the whole idea that he's half man, half vampire and all that, the movie did that.
Oh, interesting.
That wasn't the comic. The comics like retconned that in after the movie. Mm-hmm. But the movie was, and that's what sort of, if you were to list like certain characteristics of Blade, that would be like one of the main things you say.
Right.
I
got to check those out sometime. I still haven't seen them. So.
Oh, you've seen none of them?
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I suspect, I mean, come on. Assuming the MCU Blade ever gets released, I feel like we'll probably commentary our way through the first one.
I'm into it. I feel like it's something I would enjoy right now.
I think so. I agree.
I have to mention, by the way, too, he referenced the Wakita Twister Museum.
Yeah.
And, obviously, Sean being the huge Twister head that he is, I was like, we passed through Oklahoma. And I was like, are we going to check it out? And he's like, I already looked into it. It's like 3 hours off course. I was like, I was really hoping we'd get to, I'm just curious what's there. I was hoping to glimpse it. But, yeah, not writing it off sometime in the future.
One of these days. Mm-hmm. Here's another note we got from Stephen Clubb, and this is in reference to our commentary track for Terminator Salvation.
Mm-hmm. I want to hear about this.
He says, this is, and I fully agree with this sentiment. He says, sometimes backstory should remain backstory. He says, pretty much the entire movie, I wondered how the Terminators couldn't crush humanity like a bug. They were so overpowered in Salvation specifically that humanity didn't stand a chance, no matter how good John Connor was at making pipe bombs. It's one thing to say humanity won. It's quite another to show them being outnumbered, outmatched, and outclassed.
That's a great point.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of gets to what I've said in our track, where it's like the little snippets we got of the future war were more interesting than setting an entire movie within it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's just fascinating, mysterious backstory in the first film.
Yeah.
This is the world that person comes from. That's why it matters. But now we are in 1984, and the mission must be completed. But yeah, when you really dig into it, you open up a whole can of worms of questions. And I'm not saying that there can't be a version that is good in the future, but if you don't do it well enough, then yes, you start to have those questions crop up.
Well, it gets to just the inherent problem with prequels all the time, which is, again, as you said, not to say you can't have a good prequel, but fundamentally, the question you have to lick is, well, if this was important enough to tell, it would have already been told the first time. Like everything you need should already be in the first movie. And by the way, you know what's funny? I was having this conversation in a broad sense with my students, and I was like what are I was like, I'm making the case. I was like, I don't think most prequels are necessary. And hands shot up. Well, what about the Star Wars prequels? And I said, well, I know you all grew up with them. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say they weren't necessary.
right.
and the slack-jawed, responses I got. But I still feel that, right? I don't. At this point, they're grandfathered in. I don't mind them. But fundamentally, I lived 22 years. No, I personally did not. I lived 20 years without any Star Wars prequels. But the world lived for 22 years without Star Wars prequels.
Yep.
And we did just fine.
You're right. I love that, though. That's so interesting from people that they only know a world that exists with them. They're part of the story.
For them, it's like, well, how can you know Anakin turned bad if you don't see him turn bad? And it's like, well, we used our imagination, son. It's a magical thing.
I love it.
Here's another comment we got from Jeffrey Meisner, also in reference to our Terminator Salvation commentary. He says, I think this was the funniest commentary track yet. I can't wait for Genesis and Dark Fate, which isn't something I thought I'd say again.
That's funny. No, well, thank you.
I had such a blast talking through that movie with you.
Me too. It was fun. I had said weeks ago, I wanted to go back because I watched every Terminator sequel once, dismissed it, and moved on with my life.
Yeah.
But I kind of wanted to give them another shake when I wasn't judging them so harshly, opening night. And it was really fun looking at the pluses and minuses and talking through them with you.
So have you watched Genesis and Dark Fate again?
No, but I really do intend to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, just wait a little while, and we'll get to it for our commentary track.
Yeah.
I feel like this has become kind of like a late summer thing now.
Our Terminator commentaries.
Yeah, it's like for the next couple summers at least.
Yeah, I remember little bits of them. That's why I'm excited to go back. I'm excited to remember what the stories actually are.
Yeah,
and like the leaps they take, and I just remember. I feel like I can picture. What's her name from Game of Thrones? Emilia Clarke.
Yeah.
Calling the Terminator Pops or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a memory I have.
Yeah.
I don't really remember the movie.
Well, we'll get there eventually.
Yep. Who you interviewed, by the way? Remember that?
I did. I think we put her interview on the show, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm fairly certain. Yeah.
It seriously, I've done plenty of long form interviews. I've done plenty of junkets. That interview with Emilia Clarke, probably, if not my favorite, in like my top 3.
Wow.
She was so sweet, and I just started out by saying, well, we had a conversation about the movie. It was me before you.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like very gregarious about that film. And then I ended with, hey, I have a Game of Thrones question. And she's like, okay. And I was like, I should preface this by saying I've never seen the show. And she was just delighted by that,
that's great.
Very, very sweet. So I'll always have an affinity for her, even though I've still yet to see Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I'd be curious. I'd be curious how it holds up.
It's funny, when we were in Chicago, my son, his name is Mikhail, and he was telling he was telling my cousin, he's like, oh, if I'm around like regular folks, aka white people, I just say call me Michael, right? And I was like, well, dude, come on, man. You got a unique name. Just go for it. And my cousin, I love that. He's like, hey, listen, man, if white people can say Daenerys Targaryen, they can say Mikhail.
Bravo. 100%. 100%.
I was like, okay, yeah, pretty much,
Yeah. That's hilarious.
But hey, let's take another short break. We got some headlines. All right. Well, we are back, and here's some good news for the, I'm going to say the 8 or 10 people who are interested. But Horizon: An American Saga Chapter 1 is now streaming on Max.
There you go. This is it for everybody who was like, wow, wait, it should have been a series, whatever. Like, well, there it is. I'm actually very curious to read a little more discourse about this movie. Now,
I feel I've taken this on. This is like my charity right now. is to help multimillionaire Kevin Costner
right.
have his little passion project succeed.
Right.
Still no date, by the way, for part 2.
But it is going to debut at a festival, isn't it?
Yeah, but out of competition.
Yeah, but I mean, it exists. It's mixed. It's, you know what I mean? It's been printed or downloaded onto some sort of DCP or something. You know what I mean? It exists. So I would love to see it. I really would. I mean, we were both positive. You were more positive. I was like positive, and I'm ready for the next thing, so I can feel like I have a more complete sense of what the story is.
Yeah.
So I'm ready. Yeah. I hope people discover it here, and then I hope the second one, there's a demand for it. People
I mean, just
up.
selfishly at this point, I want to be able to justify the 3 hours that I've put in thus far.
Sure. Yeah, totally.
Right. That's really because 3 hours. See, this is not like the Acolyte, right? Because the Acolyte ended, and I'm like, all right, well, that's the end, and that's fine. This, I'm like, no. We're in the middle of the beginning.
Right. Yes. Definitely.
I need something. I need some closure of some kind.
Arcs have begun, but there have not been any wrap-ups or conclusions to anything. So,
that's right.
Yeah, we'll see where it's going.
So just give us that. Come on. Come on. It's like we're like that the SNL, where with Chris Farley is like the dad. He's a good boy. Just let him finish his movie.
Yeah.
Kevin Costner's like,
let him finish his movie.
Please let me finish my movie. Come see it. Come see part 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Let him finish it. Hey, speaking of passion projects that are shrouded in controversy, here's something interesting. So Megalopolis, which I have trouble saying that title. It sounds like a made up name.
Yes.
But it is in fact Francis Coppola's next project, possibly his like filmmaking swan song.
Possibly. I mean, this has been a long time coming too. I mean, this is like you said, passion project. This has been years in the making. He put up his vineyards, to make this thing. That's how much he wanted to do it.
He's paid out of pocket to make this sci-fi epic starring Adam Driver. So this one is due out when, Brian?
Like end September, I think.
Okay, right? So it's coming up. So Lionsgate, which is distributing it, had a little bit of a snafu earlier this week because they put out an ad. Now the thinking behind the ad was, hey, I'm guessing they're looking at this movie and they're like, God, this thing is kind of I'm guessing, not having seen it, they're like, this is going to be hard to market. That's because it's esoteric and whatever, just based on the trailer and the reactions out of Cannes or wherever it played.
Yep.
So they put out a trailer where they have quotes from famous critics who were dismissive of Coppola's previous masterpieces. And so you have, Roger Ebert saying Bram Stoker's Dracula is no good, and you have Pauline Kael saying The Godfather's no good, or whatever it was. And so that gets put out there, and that's it. And then it turns out, and this is done with a little bit of digging. I think Bilge Eberly, who was the first person who noticed this, realized that the quotes were fabricated.
Yeah, I think it was as easy as he took those quotes, put them into Google, and they did not turn up. He checked out the reviews by Pauline Kael for The Godfather, and those quotes were not included.
And apparently, it gets more interesting. Those quotes were, in fact, AI generated.
Oh, I didn't even know that part.
Yeah, this is as of just earlier today in Variety. It says here, Lionsgate has parted ways with Eddie Egan, the marketing consultant who came up with the Megalopolis trailer that included fake quotes from famous film critics. Studio pulled the trailer on Wednesday after it was pointed out that the quotes trashing Francis Ford Coppola's previous work did not actually appear in the critics' reviews and were in fact made up. Let's see, where's the bit here? Yeah, it's for instance, the trailer claimed that Pauline Kael wrote in the New Yorker that The Godfather was, quote, diminished by its artsiness. Kael, in fact, loved the movie. Listen to this. Weird. When Variety prompted AI service ChatGPT to provide negative criticism about Coppola's work from well-known reviewers, the responses provided were strikingly similar to the quotes included in the trailer.
Wow.
So ChatGPT is something I'm having to deal with as a college professor.
I can't even imagine. I really can't. I mean, people turning in papers to you, like, how in the world do you know?
At this point, I'm swimming against the tide. It's so hard, Wow. So what I've tried to do as an instructor is try to minimize the amount of subjective work,
mm-hmm.
and instead lean more heavily on objective assessment quizzes and things like that.
Where are we headed, Zachy?
I mean, it's like, I still have like essays and stuff, but what I've tried to do is narrowcast my own prompt to sort of to put the focus on, give me your thoughts, give me your, like, what's your interpretation of this? And just, there's no right or wrong necessarily, mm-hmm. but I just want to see that you've given it some thought,
mm-hmm.
and that's something that ChatGPT can't necessarily do for you, but it's hard, and I don't know what the film is about, but sure, it would be the irony of ironies if it too is something about the encroachment of AI.
Actually, that would be. But I mean, it's funny because I was, like I said, on the road and I wasn't able to keep up with news the same way. But I saw this story unfold as headlines, mm-hmm. where it was like new Megalopolis trailer, Megalopolis trailer bold, and it's using negative quotes to bolster itself. And then it's like Megalopolis trailer under scrutiny. It's like, Lionsgate apologizes. Like, just watching this story through headlines throughout the day was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, how hard would it have been to find a negative quote about any of those movies? Just one quote. Like, and why attribute it to some of the most famous film critics of all time?
Who are gone, right?
Yeah.
And that was the weird thing. Because I watched the trailer and I'd love to say I was like, well, those aren't real quotes. I didn't, but I was definitely, it pricked me a little bit because I was like, I don't think Pauline Kael hated The Godfather. I feel like I would remember that. So I was like, oh, they're probably pulling like one phrase out of context
mm-hmm.
to make it sound like she hated it. That was my assumption.
Right.
I didn't think they were ChatGPTing that bitch. The trailer.
Yeah.
Bitch, I mean the trailer.
Yeah. Well, and we should say also that the trailer was narrated by Lawrence Fishburne. Which
is he in the movie?
I don't know, but I mean, he goes all the way back to Apocalypse Now, right? With Coppola.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So I mean, just hearing his voice, man, he's an actor, but there was just this air of authenticity, or you know what I mean? Like it gave it this sort of feeling of, I don't know. I definitely get the vibe they were going for. It could have almost worked. It just was too bad they had to not only lie, but like they got caught so quickly. You know what I mean? It wasn't even it was an easily checked lie.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally. I mean, we're talking about ChatGPT. I mean, it's because I've gotten essays that were clearly AI generated, and I check the sources, and I'm like, this source doesn't exist.
Oh, it makes up sources?
Oh, sure, yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, I've never really used it. I think I went on there once, like as an experiment. Like you did this really funny thing where you were like, give me the plot to The Fugitive 2.
That's right.
And you were sending me all these things. And so I went in there and it was just like, what would happen if like, Gumby married, Miss Piggy or something? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know where that came from right now. But
I don't know. We're learning all kinds of things.
Actually, I have a Gumby on my desk.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, Gumby. But I've never tried it for anything serious.
Sure.
So when you're reading a ChatGPT generated essay, I mean, is it immediately obvious? Like, is there turns of phrases, or does it sound kind of sterile and robotic?
There are certain red flags.
Uh-huh.
But here's the reality. I mean, it just the ground is shifting under our feet.
Right.
So you have things like Grammarly and whatever that everybody uses now to check their writing, right?
Sure.
And so, I mean, it's harder and harder because you can't just pull somebody aside and be like, hey, I know you had AI do this, because you just don't know. You don't, if you're gonna come out with the accusation like that, you better be completely buttoned down, and you just can't be.
Yeah.
So I mean, I this is like, we're just going off on this tangent, but I think as an instructor, what I'm struggling with is finding a way to incorporate AI and say, maybe find a way to say, hey, use it, but use it the right way.
I think that makes sense to me. Like you said, hard. I mean, we're not getting rid of it. So if you can find out a way to continue to help them to expand themselves while using it, that seems forward thinking to me.
Yeah, look, I think, and I mean, I'm lucky because it's not like I'm teaching English lit or something where people are going to write really advanced type stuff. I can be like, hey, what'd you think of this movie? And I'm like, and I can just be like, hey, and I want to hear from you. I don't really care what ChatGPT has to say, but fundamentally, this is, I mean, it's orders of magnitude of difference, but it's a similar place to like Wikipedia, where when it first started, it was like, oh, don't use Wikipedia, right? And I've said it for a while. I'm like, look, I could say don't use Wikipedia. I know you're going to use it anyway. But there's a way to use it, right? And there are best practices. And so I think with ChatGPT, it's just a matter of figuring out, well, what are the best practices here,
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. As it pertains to the Megalopolis trailer, it's kind of funny because Lionsgate said that they pulled it, but I guess it made it to a few prints of The Crow, which just opened. Okay. And so I know I saw pictures of people who went to see The Crow last night, and they had pictures of the Megalopolis trailer with the faulty quote attributions.
How funny. I mean, yeah, I was worried I was going to miss it for that reason. Like I wanted to see it, but it was very easy to find. So
yes,
still out there.
Well, actually, while we're talking about The Crow, I mean, neither of us has seen it, but holy crap! Like, right? Like, it feels like people just kind of lined up to take a whack at this thing.
Yeah. I'm a frequent Reddit user, and one of the Reddits I subscribe to is like movie, spoiler review or like non-spoiler review sort of thing. And so every week when something comes out, I'm curious to look at the non-spoiler thing. And man, yeah, everybody was, taking a whack at it. This one, there was, the thing that I'd read, I can't back this up. I haven't seen it, but apparently he doesn't really even become like the Crow or act out as the Crow until like the third act of the film.
Seems like a problem.
What? Like, then what are we doing here?
See, what strikes me is that this is a film that certainly for the entire life of our podcast has been in some stage of development.
Yeah, long time.
I mean, since the mid 2000s. And at one point, Bradley Cooper was attached.
Yeah.
Jason Momoa. I'm sure other people I'm forgetting. I mean, they've been trying to get this thing going for a while. And I've been absolutely consistent in saying, why on earth do you need to remake this movie? If for no other reason than the the tragedy behind that original film is something that should let it stand apart forever, you know. And it's still
Yeah.
holds up, by the way, the Brandon Lee film.
Wait, say that again.
It still holds up.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, yeah, they got it right the first time.
Yeah.
Everything about it. I mean, the soundtrack is iconic. The look of it is iconic. You know, the makeup and everything. I mean, and to be fair, they've made sequels. They had a TV series.
They're all pretty bad.
Yeah, but I can understand it. Like, it's an iconic visual, that character. So in the age of nothing but IPs being made, it makes sense to want to try to do something with The Crow. But, you know, I think we were saying before we even got on air, it's like, if you don't have it, don't waste it. You know, like, they've been trying for so long, it hasn't been working. Like, why did they all of a sudden go, yeah? Did they just say good enough?
I mean, clearly, right? You know, Rupert Sanders directed this. He did Snow White and the Huntsman, right?
Yeah.
And Bill Skarsgård, who I hear is like okay in it.
Yeah, you know, he's one of those guys I think everybody kind of likes, but he just kind of can't get a break with his films.
Right.
He was in what was that really violent movie? Was it John Wick 4?
I don't know. That's the only one I haven't seen.
Oh, funny. I'm not making a great case for it, but I remember seeing him in a movie where he played this. I think it was John Wick 4, but I remember thinking, I like this guy. Like, he's pretty good. He's a good presence. Like, he's unique.
It is John Wick 4, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. I remember him in horse stables and, you know, hurting people, but yeah, man, it kind of bums me out. I feel bad for him, you know, like, yeah, you take a role, you give it a shot, but if it's not there, it's not there.
I mean, to the point you were making earlier, they did 3 sequels.
Wow.
To The Crow, the original one.
Okay.
And I would say only one is like a direct sequel in that it carries forward certain characters. But the thing is, did the Eric Draven story really need to be done again?
Yeah, I know. It feels like the natural way to go is tell a different story, and The Crow brings someone else back for a different reason. Yeah,
or just do something in the vein of The Crow, but have it be a brand new thing.
No, that doesn't make any sense to my executive brain, Zachy.
Hey, crazy talk. It's fun. I used to watch the television show.
Oh, really?
Which was, yeah, I mean, it was like a syndicated, you know, WCIU, you know, Saturday afternoons, you know, shot in Vancouver type thing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was Eric Draven.
Righting wrongs?
Basically, yeah. So instead of, you know, the film ends with him, he's reunited with Shelley, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
But the show was called The Crow Stairway to Heaven.
Uh-huh.
And the idea is that, like, he has to eventually he'll be reunited with her, but he has to, like, do good deeds and stuff.
Okay.
Which, like, all right, you know. You know what I didn't like about that? It starred Mark Dacascos as Eric, and he's been in a bunch of stuff. Like, he was on Hawaii Five-0 and stuff, but he was in the Double Dragon movie. Remember that?
I do, yeah.
He was the not Scott Wolf.
Scott Wolf's the only person I remember from that. So okay,
yeah. But it was like he has like a normal. He looks normal, and then like when he's like goes into action, he like crows out.
Oh,
and he gets like crow face.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. That was like their solution, as opposed to having him just wander around with the makeup on
all the time. Yeah. So he could walk into a bar somewhere and look unassuming, but then he gets activated.
He's like, crow powers activate. I think he would say that.
Yeah.
So that's a weird one. I can't speak to whether it's. I can't imagine it holds up very well, but I remember watching it when it aired.
Yeah. Well, this movie. I mean, I gotta be honest. I don't think I would leave the house for it. But there's a curiosity factor that I would, if it was on HBO one evening, I could see stopping on it.
Well, there you go. That's Brian's final word on The Crow. I mean, I do think it is remarkable that, I mean, there was no chatter about this movie at all leading up into literally its release.
No, well, the trailer came out a couple months ago. Everyone tugged on their collars, going, "Ugh." And then, yeah, to your point, you texted me and said, "Can you believe no one's talking about The Crow?" And I think I said, "That's coming out this week."
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even know that, and I follow this stuff.
And I should say, I mean, I mentioned it in my class just as a, oh, by the way, and most of them are like, we don't even know what The Crow is.
I was just wondering. Yeah, I wonder if that's like I'm trying to think of an equivalent. I mean, that was 94. So that's like 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
so 94, like
it had
64,
cultural relevance above and beyond the music and everything, obviously, because of Brandon Lee and what happened to him. And
yep.
I mean, I think the movie holds up pretty well, but it's going to have a different resonance for our generation.
Yeah, I'd be curious actually to show it to someone younger and see what they think of it.
Yeah. Like you said, great soundtrack.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hey, let's take another short break, and we will talk about the movie still sitting atop the box office this weekend. And we're back, and hey, Brian, you know who else is back?
What's that, Zeki? It's been a while.
It's those wacky face-hugging xenomorphs from the Alien franchise.
Yay!
Just when you thought it was safe to go back into space.
Space, yeah.
Or something. Alien Romulus is in theaters now. It was number one last weekend, and as it heads into its second weekend, looks like it's going to be number one again as we record this. So if I'm wrong, boy, will I have egg on my face. But that's where we're at right
apparently, for people who've seen the first Crow, it can rain all the time.
You know, that film, by the way, Alex Proyas, who directed that film.
Yeah.
Really, like, he had the potential to be like a Ridley Scott level visionary.
Yeah.
I mean, between The Crow and Dark City.
Yeah.
If you just call it a career after those two, man, you got it made in the shade.
What happened? I know he made Knowing.
Yes, and he did I, Robot.
I, Robot. I forgot about that one. Yeah.
And then he did Gods of Egypt, and that's a wrap.
Are those his projects, or was he someone who took, a script and was the visionary who brought it to life?
That I do not know, although I suspect, at least insofar as I, Robot, he was probably something close to a hired gun.
It's so interesting because what I remember about I, Robot is that it felt like a very polished studio sci-fi adventure film. And I just didn't feel a lot for it, which is weird coming from a guy who made Dark City and The Crow.
That's right.
Right? Which are just dripping with, like, I don't know, artistry and creativity and a vision. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I thought I, Robot was fine. It was like eye candy. I don't remember anything about it.
Same.
But anyway.
Yeah.
Speaking of eye candy, I should say, Alien Romulus. This is the 9th Alien film, by the way. Can you believe that?
Wow.
That's a lot. That includes 2 Alien versus Predator movies. They're part of the count as far as I'm concerned.
Still, I saw someone say that this is a 45-year-old franchise the other day, and I was like, wow.
That is bananas.
That's something.
That really is. And I think that says a lot about sort of the eternal appeal of this particular monster.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this was originally intended to be a straight-to Hulu movie, a la Prey, a couple of years ago.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Well, I think Disney saw the good reaction Prey got, and they were like, that should have been released in theaters.
Agreed.
And so with this, they rejiggered it a little bit. It was made for around $80 million. Which is like, in today's economy, that's like Blair Witch Project money.
Dude, you would never know it.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So I should say, I as I mentioned earlier in the show, I went and saw it with Adam Lance Hendrickson, a fan of our show, who said, "Hey, let's meet at in Elmhurst. There's like a classic cinema." I was like, "Let's do it." And it's like an old timey. It's like the Last Action Hero theater. You know what I mean?
Oh, cool. Okay, like Movie Palace.
Kind of one of them things. Yeah, but the screening room itself had been upgraded, and it had reclining seats and stuff, and newfangled sound. And so we sit down and we start watching. The movie starts playing, and you could not really make out the dialogue.
Oh,
So the sound mix was shoddy to the point where Adam, to his credit, got up several times to be like, "Hey guys, this ain't it's not working." The sound, it was hard to hear.
What do you mean? Like in terms, like it was bad speakers,
It
or
was
like
not. It was not mixed properly, in my layman's opinion.
yeah, maybe certain channels weren't coming
Yeah.
through. Yeah.
So like the dialogue was being overpowered by the sound effects and whatnot.
Okay.
So you had to struggle a little bit to hear it. Like I'm somebody, when I watch movies at home, just as I watch with subtitles on.
Oh no.
So I'm like, God, I could use some subtitles,
No, I just said, oh no, because Federica does that too, and you're only emboldening her. But you know what? It's a huge thing. I'm seeing memes about this. I was on the airplane recently. I saw people like, I know this is a thing. I have such a hard time with it.
I've been watching movies with subtitles since 2001, when they released the Godfather trilogy on DVD.
Yeah.
And I was having trouble understanding some of these folks and their accents. I put on the subtitles. I was like, oh my God, this is the promised land.
Do you find your eyes drawn to it though?
At this point, no. It's just part of the experience.
So you're sort of used to them on screen. I mean, obviously, when I'm watching a foreign film or something in a different language, I'm used to it, and my eyes are drawn to it. I need them. But so if a line goes past really quickly, you don't understand it. You're kind of trained to look down really quickly. And
I mean, it's not. I wouldn't even say it's that directed emotion. It's just I'm just taking the totality of the screen, including the text.
I see. Okay. Okay.
So Federica, keep doing what you're doing. I got your back. Don't listen to this heathen.
That's hilarious.
But anyway, I could have used some of them subtitles watching it. So the mix got a little better as we went, and it was not an ideal experience. But I want to call out Adam actually getting up multiple times and asking him to fix it, because I don't know that I would have did that.
No, yeah, I had experience like that too, where audio was weird. It was very loud, loud to the point of pain. And I, to this day, I'm like, why didn't I get up and say something rather than go through that for 2.5 hours?
So what ended up happening is I had to watch it again just so that I could make out the dialogue. And you watched this last night, right?
Yesterday afternoon, yeah.
Yesterday afternoon. Okay, so we have not discussed this at all. I think it's, and I hate doing this, I think it's just one of those, it's fine.
Zachy?
Yeah.
I loved it.
Really? Wow.
How often does that happen?
Wow, all right.
I went in I wouldn't even say skeptical. Yeah. I'm a fan of Alien and Aliens, but they're not like my Terminator 2, where I know it backwards and forwards.
Sure.
It's tied to my youth or anything.
Yeah.
And so I saw the trailer. I was like, I'm hopeful. I love that shot of Kaylee Spaney with the gun. It looks like something from 1986 in the best possible way.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And so I went into this truly out of obligation. Like nice. I would watch it at some point, but the hit to miss ratio on the series is not that great. You know what I mean? Not
great. Yeah, that's right.
And so I went in like, okay, here we go. And then it's like it starts out on that, colonized planet, and her and her brother, quote unquote, and like, and I was like, I'm kind of into this. Like I'm enjoying the world building. And then it came up with their goal. It's a little risky, but let's go do this. And then we can get into specifics later, but like this ticking clock is introduced, and I literally out loud went, fantastic.
Yeah.
That ticking clock is so cool. And I loved the filmmaking. I loved I thought they captured the alien aesthetic of these like damp ships and like a filmmaker visuals, very thoughtful direction. And like the tension was interesting or well done. The set pieces were inventive and used everything that was available within not only the geography of the ship but the logic of the ship and how it works.
Yeah.
And
The station
the space station, and like 2/3 in, I was like A+. Like
wow, all right.
No, I mean, is this like A+, like Godfather's A+? Like no, like but like as an
no,
alien,
I totally get what you're saying.
A+. Like I have no complaints. And then in the third act, something happens that made me like,
That's where it kind of lost me. Not even lost me, but that's where I was like, all right,
Me
you
too.
know, yeah.
I was actually like, dude, Federica hates movies like this. I think she might actually like this. And then I was even like, you know what? I'm going to take my brother. I'm going to take my brother to this. And then I have to say the ending did knock me down to like, yeah, maybe I'll take my brother.
See, okay. So without spoiling anything, here is where I end up at it's fine. Because I did enjoy it. I think all the stuff that you said, I think Fede Alvarez did an amazing job really evoking both of the first two films. Both of them.
Like chef's kiss.
Yeah. I don't what I and they what they said what the filmmaker said, oh, there's all these like nods to the other films in the series throughout. And I was on board for the most part and we'll get into those in spoilers. Mm-hmm. What I was less on board for, and my son, my oldest son, I went with him the second time. He pointed this out and I agree with him. The final third or the final bit at near the end is a virtual remake of the original movie.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. And that's the other thing too. I do have to give like a caveat, even though I'm not backing down from really enjoying myself with this.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe it even had to do with me sort of, okay, I just got back from this trip. I'm really tired, but I got to go see this and talk about it with Zachy. And then getting really into it and leaning forward in my seat and walking out like, man, I had a good time. Yeah. That was my experience. I also have seen people criticizing it for being, I guess, derivative, like just repeating the first two films. And I would say, you know what? You're not wrong. Like, you're not wrong. Like, this to me feels like a synthesis. I would say a very good synthesis of 1 and 2.
See, you know what? You're right. And if I can just add to that, what it felt like to me was a Force Awakens alien movie.
Yeah, sure.
Right. You know how Force Awakens is basically a remake of Star Wars?
Yeah.
That's what this is, right? And essentially, Kaylee Spaney is, and you got Rey and Finn basically.
No, you're so right.
I'm not saying that in a bad way. I get it because this is an IP, and Disney's going to want to find Fox/Disney's going to find ways to platform it outward. Totally fine. The only part of that derivative aspect that pulled me out was how much the final piece felt like just redoing the exact ending of Alien.
I can't disagree. And I think I actually like that we both have these opinions because I think we're coming from slightly similar but slightly different places, relationships with the movies. So I'm happy I can sort of represent this where it's like someone who saw Star Wars 2 or 3 times and was like, oh yeah, I remember liking Star Wars. Yeah. So it's not maybe as in my face.
Right.
Although it did cross my mind while it was happening.
I mean, I'll tell you. I mean, given the totality of Alien films, I would place this in the upper third.
Me too. Oh yeah, definitely.
I don't know where I'd put it with reference to the third one. But certainly, I liked it better than the fourth one, which I don't believe you've even seen.
No. Everybody's told me it's not worth it, and so I'll watch it someday. But it's never. Yeah,
that's a weird one, man. Because I think it has some good ideas.
Yeah.
That are not executed particularly well, in my opinion. I think this one, what I really appreciated, and I think we're like yay close to spoilers. So, but ultimately, what I appreciated was the aesthetic approach, how it very much it lives within the world of those first 2 movies. It's clearly made. Fede Alvarez, and I'm assuming the various people he got to make the movie with him, very much coming at it as fans of those 2 movies.
Definitely. I mean, the production design, like I said, the damp ships, the old school sort of 80s kind of computers.
The computers, yep.
Yep.
I loved that, honestly.
Me too, man.
You know,
Me too. And even just real quick, I just want, and the filmmaking, like there was the lenses. I could tell the lenses he was using, and like I don't know if it was shot on film or not. Usually, I'm pretty good at it. Twisters was shot on film, and it was beautiful. You could tell, and I really feel like it elevated that film. This one, I don't know. It feels like it was, and so I think it reminded. You know what it was? It like evoked the type of movies that delighted me when I was young.
Sure.
It's style. There's a group shot where the kids are talking about, I think they're talking about taking off or what the plan is. And there's this group shot of them, and it just has that sort of slightly warped wide angle sort of, and the way that they're blocked and seated in the room. And I was just like, man, I feel like I'm watching a lost movie from my youth. and it really, and not just that stuff. I did enjoy the relationship with Kaylee Spaney and, like I said, her brother. That worked for me. And
that was my
changes, the shifts in that. Yeah. That worked for you too?
Oh, yeah. And by the way, David Johnson, who plays Andy, he was great.
That, to me, that's like a star-making role.
Yeah, he was terrific in that.
Yeah, and she's been great too. I mean, Priscilla,
had a good
Civil
year.
War,
good couple of years.
Alien, yeah. And I just thought the set piece. I mean, that's what we're going for. Could you completely shift it and not put it on a ship and people getting picked off? Yes, and I think they should, because they're going to keep making these. Please do that. But for whatever this is, like I said, as a synthesis, I thought it was a highly successful synthesis of new characters, new locations, new parameters, and some really cool ideas for them to navigate through that just had me. I literally noticed at one point I was leaning forward in my seat, having a great time.
Yeah. I think ultimately where I landed is it's a fine entry in this franchise that doesn't touch its heights.
Sure.
But is pretty well above its lows.
Yeah. And I mean, in the age of these legacy sequels, speaking of The Crow, you know what I mean?
Right.
You go, oh, well, they can make another good Alien movie.
Right.
Even though, yes, like, is it a little bit, an echo, too much of an echo of something?
Very much so. Oh, very much so. Yeah.
Absolutely. I can see that. And it would be cool if they could figure out some sort of new angle to come at it with. Totally. But I guess it was just to my surprise how much I enjoyed this.
Well, hey, you want to talk spoilers?
Let's do it.
Spoilers.
So right up top, we come in, you have the typeface, the Saul Bass typeface,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, already my short hairs are standing up. I'm like, oh, here we go.
Dude, did that James Horner-esque music over the stars? I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I was like, you're really going to do like a score like that?
Well, and then we float through the wreckage of the Nostromo.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, sign me up, you know?
Yep. And look, I couldn't tell if it was a model or CG.
Oh, there you go.
So whoever did that, kudos, man. Kudos.
I had a student, by the way, recently who was like, "Oh, I just watched the original Alien," and I was like, "Oh, what'd you think?" And they said, I didn't think the CG was very good." And I said, "Oh, well, there's a reason for that."
I love that. Oh.
No, but okay. So this is set 20 years after Alien, right? I think the term is midquel as the youngsters these days refer to it. So I liked that. I like how they found some cracks to fit this story into.
Mm-hmm.
That all I was on board with. The what I'm like, this is my problem, right? I'm like watching how does the continuity fit together, right? And and you've got the Ridley Scott prequel movies, Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and you got this, and how does it all fit? And what I appreciated was that this movie attempts to encompass the totality. So you've got, so we should mention this. You've got a CGI resurrected Ian Holm.
Yeah, what'd you think about that?
So I've seen a lot of people online kind of losing their shit over this.
Yeah.
right? Oh, this is, it's disrespectful. It's a homunculus and all this other stuff. And on maybe this is like a controversial opinion, but I'm like, look, if you can do it well, and if the family is on board with it, I don't see that much of a problem with it.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it worked. It was jarring at first,
Right.
and some of it I thought looked a little dodgy. I think that was the
Yes.
only dodgy looking visual effects in the film,
Yes.
but it felt of the world.
It did. The
yeah.
only caveat I would say is I would have preferred if he, and this is not Ash, this is Rook, a new character, but I think in terms of the movie's shorthand, it makes sense to have him because you see Ian Holm and right away you're like, this guy's sketchy. As opposed to having a new synthetic person, and then we have to connect the dots on our own whether he is or not a good guy or bad guy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
However, I would have preferred not to have him be a presence all the way throughout. I think a little would have gone a long way.
Yeah. Like how he's appearing on those monitors at the end.
On the monitors, and then this is a thing that bugged me. I don't mind member berries. What I don't like is, and this is Terminator movies do this, like, oh hey, I'll be back, right?
Yeah.
Where he's like, I don't. I won't tell you the chances, but you have my sympathy. And I'm like, oh, that's the exact same thing Ash says. Like, you guys all just say the same stuff. That stuff takes me out of it.
And surprisingly, as on the nose as that wasn't the, to my opinion, most offensive use of a line.
And I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
If Andy said, get away from her, period.
Yep.
I would have been fine.
Perfect.
When he says, literally, he's like, get away from her, ... I'm like, please don't.
I know.
Please don't. You bitch. Oh, damn it.
I know. It was like, oh, come on. Like, it's like he had watched the other movie.
Exactly.
And he doesn't,
that drives me crazy
that way. That's
right.
not his character to talk like that.
Right.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
So that type of stuff I don't like. As far as the Rook character and the role he plays, I had no problem. Again, I'm kind of like, look, it sounds like the family was on board, and I know before Ian Holm died, he did this little cameo in The Hobbit. So I feel like he would have been open to this at least. I don't know. Maybe I don't. That's presumptuous on my part, but I just feel like it doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So all of that, I was on board with that. And again, the aesthetic, like the way they go into the science lab, and you're like, my God, this looks like the thing on the Nostromo. Like I loved all of that stuff. I think that this is where watching it twice really helped. I was like, how long has this ship been like a derelict? You know what I mean? Because I'm like, it sounds like all of what they're doing is pretty important. It sounds like the company knew about it.
Right.
Here. And then the second time, because I could actually hear him, he's like, we were searching for the wreckage of the Nostromo for 20 years. We found it about 110 days ago. And so within the last 3 months, all of this went down.
Right.
So then it makes sense that, everything went to shit very quickly, and the company just hasn't had time to send anybody. And they just happened to stumble upon it then. So that clicked for me. That made sense.
Yeah.
In terms of the progression of the story, like I said, I was kind of like, first of all, when they find the room with the face huggers.
Yeah.
Dude, I've seen so many versions of this scene,
Sure.
I'm like, oh, they did something new.
Yep.
That, and then there's the other scene when they're going, it's like a room full of face huggers, and they have to just get through it.
And be quiet.
Dude.
And then that girl's in peril, and she's speaking through the comm, and he's like, like trying to cover the comm. Oh, it's great.
By the way, Dora the Explorer goes through it in this movie.
Oh, that's her?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, she's
Isabella Merced. Yeah, we just saw her in that other piece of shit movie too. What was that? Madam Web.
Wow. Okay. No, she's great in this.
She was good in this. She was really good.
But dude, yeah, the set pieces, the whole thing where they introduce the gravity,
yes,
kicking on and off. introduced at the beginning, and it's fun because it makes it an obstacle for them to get to their goal. Right at the beginning. But the way that comes back into play when she's in that hallway, I loved it because she was in that hallway. She's literally got her back against the wall. There's all these aliens coming toward her, and she's got that gun. But she can't shoot them because their acid blood will go through the ship and they'll crash.
Right.
I literally was like, I love this. I have no idea what she can do. I don't know. And I can't wait to find out. And then when they use the gravity, and so she kills all the aliens, and all their blood is floating in the air, and she has to navigate her way through there. And even like she's going to encounter it, so she shoots her gun to push herself down.
Yeah.
I was like, come on. Yeah. This is great.
That was pretty effective. I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? That's the essential. This is something that Ridley Scott talked about after Prometheus. Before Alien Covenant, they were going to do just a straight ahead sequel to Prometheus. And somebody asked him, like, are you going to bring in the alien or whatever? He says, well, I think they've done everything they can with that creature, and I think fan uproar led to them doing Alien Covenant, and that it's not a movie I was crazy about. Some people like it, but I think what this movie showed to me, at least, is like, well, it's a visually distinctive creature with a very specific set of strengths and limitations. And it's all about finding a new angle, So I'm on board for that. Just harking back to what I was saying earlier about sort of these references that include the totality. For me, hearing Ian Holm as basically Ash talking about the Prometheus,
yeah,
that's to me that's like Luke Skywalker mentioning Darth Sidious. You know what I mean? You're like, oh wow, it's that thing, but it's that other thing, and they're all connected. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think, because again, I was not a fan of Alien Covenant. However, that's in the mix, right? Yes. I like the idea of tying this in, because to me, this, by virtue of what we see in this film, it gives some context to Alien that is intriguing, right? Like, oh, the company wanted the alien, but why did they want the alien? Oh, they're trying to engineer people for terraforming or whatever. Like, all of that is interesting. These little pieces that you can carry forward,
I did like, yes, all that world building stuff was great. And like I said, the first act, I was just eating it up, like seeing them, what their reality was, and when she's trying to say that she has her hours, and the poor, android being beaten up, and he's telling the dad jokes. Like, I was just, all that was so great.
Yeah.
And then the black goo, it kind of makes sense why they would want it. It's like, well, everyone's dying. Like, we keep getting diseases. Like, colonizing these places is not working out. Yeah. We need to enhance these people. I was like, oh, yeah. I mean, I don't love the goo, but like it makes sense. Like they fit it in.
And at the very least, well, hold on, I'm going to contradict myself in just a second. But one thing about both Prometheus and Covenant, which drove me bananas, is you have people acting in a way that no human would act under these circumstances.
Yeah.
Right. So in Prometheus, they're exploring this alien temple or whatever it is, and this weird snake-looking thing pokes its head up. And so one of our genius scientific explorers is like, "Hey, buddy," and he kind of sticks his hand out. I'm like, "What are you, stupid?"
Yeah.
And he predictably dies shortly thereafter, right? And then similar stuff in Covenant. They're like, "Hey, this planet's fine. Let's all take off our helmets." I'm like, "No, yeah. Don't do that." And for the most part with this film, I was like, okay, they're at least acting believably.
Yeah.
Up until Dora the Explorer is like, "Hey, let me inject this thing into my body. What could possibly go wrong?"
It's funny. I mean, we joke about Chekhov's gun a lot. And it's funny because when she's about to do it, when she's still with Rain, and Rain all of a sudden is like, "No, don't." I was like, oh, phew. But then when, what's her name? Kay, she's alone, she's pregnant, she's dying. I was like, oh, I don't really want this to happen. But you also realize it has to happen. You know what I mean? And so then, then the movie turns into the movie Split. You know what I mean? You get like the half man, half alien hybrid thing. And I was like, like, for truly, like, I was on a high with this movie. Yeah. And when that thing was introduced, I was like, okay. I don't know. How did you feel about that?
So it looks kind of like an engineer, from
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Prometheus, right? First of all, I was like, wow, that's some crazy CGI, and that's actually a real dude.
On the close-ups, I felt like you could tell it looked pretty good.
I don't even mean the close-ups. I mean just standing up. It's a real guy.
Wow.
Like, you know how the alien in 79, that's a guy in a suit. This is a
Yeah.
guy who they just put like a alien tail on.
Holy crap! Well, I hope the NBA is keeping watch.
Right,
Guys. Yeah.
The creature is called the Offspring, by the way.
Okay. I love that band.
And it's say again.
I love that band. Yeah.
It's reminiscent of in Alien Resurrection. There's a creature called the Newborn,
Yeah.
and that's like a human alien hybrid in a different way.
I've heard about
I feel like
this.
this is a little yeah, and that's disgusting looking in that. So this is kind of in that vein.
Yeah.
I never fully got on board with it. I found it too disgusting looking.
Yes, I thought it was gross for starters, but I can live with gross if I'm on board with it.
You're right.
But it's like the whole reality of the movie shifted slightly, and I was really enjoying the reality I had just been in.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Which reality, aliens, whatever. Like,
right, but I
get it. But
the verisimilitude that they created,
which I thought they did very, very well. And then I felt like I leapt into another, like the movie Species or something. You know what I mean?
No,
and I was like, no, I was really enjoying the other movie.
Yeah, so it's this. So to me, was I crazy about Act 3? I was not. Did it kill the entire movie for me? It did not. I know for some people it did. I'm not there, but again, just to echo what I was saying before, it's not even so much as the creature being kind of off-putting or whatever, but I'm like, it became such a retread of like, okay, now she's in her underwear, now she's got to get in the spacesuit, and now she's got to open up the vacuum of space. Like, it's like beat for beat,
I definitely thought of it with kicking the thing out into space. I didn't even think about like when she was kind of ready, like in her underwear and whatever. That's so true. You're right.
Like, and then at the end, she's like, "This is Rain, Carradine, last survivor of this, signing off." I'm like, is this just a thing that we do now in this universe?
Fair. Totally fair. I
like that's the stuff that pricks me. And again, it's not like a deal breaker, but that's like, hey, you've seen the other movie, right? It's just like that thing,
Yeah. So like, I'm kind of with you. It wasn't enough to derail the movie for me. At the end of the day, I'd say like 3/4 of this movie really, really enjoyed.
Oh, 100%.
Last quarter didn't, like I said, felt like I leapt into another movie. Like you said, got a little repetitive. Although I will add to that, I did love what I was referring to earlier with the ticking clock was, we've got to get these power cells out of here. And in 36 hours, this thing is just on a collision course to this ring of this planet.
Yeah, right.
Which I was like, oh, come on, that's so good. Like, right? Like, just using the environment, it makes total sense. It's organic, original. That's a really fun. And then, of course, they get, things go haywire and it shortens the window and they're going to hit those rings even quicker. So when it came to her being connected to that cable, having to get him out, detach the bottom thing, and then it involved that bottom whatever storage thing colliding into those the spinning rings of that planet, and then the ship blasting off just in time before it hits the rings. And I really like that. I thought that was pretty cool.
No, I think the internal logic holds up pretty well, and I'm sure somebody will write in and tell me how it falls apart, and which is fine. But I mean, just at a glance, it seemed to hold up okay, and so I'm fine with that. And I like, for the most part, how it fits in continuity wise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm definitely like, well, there's an opportunity here to do something with this universe. I mean, I like the universe. I like the alien universe. I love Wayland Yutani, which I'm gonna say is like Amazon 100 years from now, basically.
Yeah.
It was all fun and games when we were ordering toilet paper. They'll be bioengineering us before we know it.
Right.
I like that, like the fleshing out of what the company is and everything else. And I think the existence of this film within this time period in the the canon speaks to like the acknowledgement that, well, that's the most fruitful place to tell stories.
Sure.
Because because they kept moving forward. The fourth Sigourney Weaver one is like 100 years after or whatever it is,
Yeah.
And it gets less interesting, but when you keep it somewhat close to where we came in, that there's the opportunity there for something that we can somewhat relate to.
Yep.
And so it's again, at this point, this is a very expansive franchise. So it's I'm kind of looking at it at any new films as new Terminator movies, almost like, okay, well, at this point, we're not going to get anything close to those first two.
Yeah.
But give me something that pulls me in a little bit. And I would say, in terms of hit to miss ratio, as far as that goes, I'd say the Alien franchise has fared better overall than than the Terminator franchise.
Yeah, definitely.
So for me personally, when the movie ended, I was like, well, I don't know what else you can do with this character, but I'd be curious to see more of her. So that's, to me, like that, I'd put that in the win column,
Totally. I mean, yeah, her and her brother being sort of the main protagonists.
Right.
I really enjoyed their journey. I mean, where he's sort of a caretaker for her, but he's programmed to be sort of like almost like a younger brother. It seems. And then when he gets his chip replaced and he becomes really smart, and then he's basically, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, kind of becomes cold in that sort of way that they don't like. And then, her deciding to go back after him, like all that tracked for me, the emotionality of all that. I was really on board.
100. Yeah. I mean, I think, well, and when we look at the other human characters, on balance, I liked them.
Same.
Which, to me, that's your win right there, where you're actually like, oh, don't do that. Like all of that idiot, the guy, the guy with the headband.
Yeah. The kind of jerk character.
The jerk character. When he sticks that little electro probe thing from Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, when he puts that in the sack, and he pulls it out, he sees it's burned. Yep. I'm like, hey, stupid.
Yeah.
Keep walking, moron.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, there's this thing sticking out. Let me just poke my eye socket right up next to it and see what's happening there.
Yeah.
This is the stuff where I'm like, come on, guys.
Yep.
It's very funny because again, you look at John Hurt in Alien, and when he looks into the thing, you're like, well, don't do that.
Right.
And you always say, like, would I say that? I'm only saying that because I know Alien, right? And I'm like, no, I'm just a terrified person in general. So if something is gooey and sketchy and not, it does not occur naturally.
Yep.
I'm not gonna stick my face in it. That's me. That's how Zaki Hassan rolls.
No need to poke it. I'm not a poke type of person.
Just keep walking.
Walking.
Yeah, but I'm glad it's performing because I'm curious to see what happens next with this universe. I think it's interesting that Ridley Scott is an EP on this. And I would not be surprised if the Prometheus references were put in at his prodding.
100%. He's like reading the script, like, where's the goo?
Right?
Yeah.
Like he's kind of like the overseer of alien stuff. It feels like. I think he might even be involved with this new show that's coming up.
You know what though? He set the template, and that is quite a template.
Quite a template.
Halfway through, I was even thinking. There was that movie that came out a couple of years ago, Life.
Oh, right.
Which was a lot like Alien, essentially, this entity picking out people in space. And I remember being fine. I don't remember a lot about it, to be honest.
Right.
But it didn't linger in my mind. It didn't create a world I remember. And I thought about that during this because, man, it's just, Ridley Scott created this sort of vibe for this universe, but I was amazed at how they reconjured that vibe. It's just not
Right.
easy to do. I mean, we were talking about it in the Terminator Salvation commentary, where I was like, this
Mhm.
doesn't feel connected to the other movies for me. It doesn't even resemble the other movies.
Right.
And I was just amazed that he was able, Alvarez was able to do that. Like it
I think
felt
so.
like an A-level execution
Yeah.
in
I mean,
evoking this
it
world again.
fits. It fits seamlessly between the first two.
Yep.
Where I'd be very curious, like if someone were to watch them in chronological order, how they would flow. And that honestly, that's the reason why the little verbal nods I didn't like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're right. If you put, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off and probably going to say the same thing you're about to.
Yeah.
Well,
no, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, then if you get the Andy character saying, "Get away from her, you bitch," and then you watch Aliens next, it's like it takes away the power of that moment, which is an incredible moment.
Yeah. See, again, it's in the theater. I was like, "Get away from her." I love it. And then when he says, "You bitch," I was like, "Ugh."
Really, like, I'd be kind of curious to be in the room when they were making that decision. Like,
yeah, I mean,
really?
you know, they had that conversation. Should we put this part of that? You know?
Oh, I'm sure there was, like a version with it, a version without it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, hey, you know what? Look, as far as I'm concerned, we have the television show coming next year by Noah Hawley, and I think that is set concurrent to Prometheus, if I'm not mistaken, timeline wise. So I don't know what the plan is with it. It's called Alien Earth. Make of that what you will.
Okay.
But I'm excited to see what they do, you know?
I'm in. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This is, you know, the Alien franchise, you know, for me, it's even between the films, you know, Dark Horse Comics for the longest time, they had a whole series of comic books.
Yeah.
And set in different time periods and whatever. And they did the same thing with Predator, you know? And that I'm kind of like that. If we end up with something like that, like what Dark Horse Comics did for all those decades, like here's an alien story set in this time, you know, and that's I'm on board for that.
Totally.
Because I think the creature is obviously visually distinctive. It's never you'll never be able to do this kind of creature as good as this. And also, I mean, I think there's a lot of potential for different story avenues to explore, you know?
I agree. And if you can keep coming with interesting scenarios and ways to play with this stuff,
yeah,
well, then I will enjoy it.
There you go.
This was great, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. When it ended, I was so tempted to text you.
Really?
But we don't tend to do that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to
try to avoid it.
Talking tomorrow. So
yeah. Well, I hope people enjoyed this conversation. And hey, let us know your thoughts. I mean, this has been somewhat of a divisive film. So, hey, maybe you disagree with us, and that's fine. Let us know. You can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. As always, if you like what we're doing, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, leave a star rating. Every little bit helps. Spread the word. We're also on YouTube. So if you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel and access our content that way, hey, you know what? That's fine too. If you're looking for me online, you can find me on social media at Zacky's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. I also have a couple pieces up at San Francisco Chronicle and also at IGN. I have my review of Watchmen Chapter 1. This is the new animated adaptation of the classic graphic novel.
Huh. Wait, where's that? Yeah. To watch?
It's streaming.
Uh-huh.
But my review is at IGN.
Cool. I'll have to check that out.
So they've taken the graphic novel and they're adapting it into two parts, a 2-part animated movie. So kind of like The Long Halloween.
Got it.
You know? Okay. So the first part goes up to, well, shit, I don't even remember what part it goes up to. But but it's interesting because I think it's a good adaptation. It's by J. Michael Straczynski. He did the script.
Uh-huh.
And it's, you know, he created Babylon 5, et cetera. And he unlike the Snyder film, you know, he tries to stick very closely to the text, you know. Mm-hmm. But the problem I had is that in terms of like the performances, which are all pretty good, but you can't help but compare them with the live action performers.
Sure, yeah.
And say what you will about the Zack Snyder movie, the casting was like on point.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie Earle Haley was amazing as Rorschach, right?
Right.
And here you've got Titus Welliver as Rorschach. Titus Welliver, great actor. And I can totally see him as Rorschach, but it's not Jackie Earle Haley.
Yeah, sure. Feels like an imitation following that.
Yeah, weirdly, right? And then the bigger problem, and this is the issue with both the Snyder film and the animated movie. Neither one convinced me that you're not better off just reading the comic.
Interesting.
That's, to me, I'm like, the comic. I mean, I remember you had this issue with the Snyder film.
Yeah. No, I read it for the first time in preparation for the movie, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, if I come across it, out of curiosity, I'd like to see. There's certain moments.
It's not terrible. It's not terrible, and the animation, it's CG animated, but the style is meant to look like Dave Gibbons' drawing.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Which I think is really cool. Like, kind of evokes his brushstroke and stuff. So worth a look. Worth a look anyway.
Cool.
But what about you? What do you have? Anything you want to talk up?
Well, in past weeks, I've been talking about new episodes of Young Jedi Adventures dropping, and they've dropped. So those are available now. Season 2, first batch of episodes on Disney Junior and Disney Plus.
Well, there you go.
There it is.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll catch you next time. This has been episode 299, and look at that. 300 is right around the corner.
Wow.
Welcome, friends, it's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.